Welcome to another Waynosfotos video, and in this video it's going to be a response video to a response video, and also how a titanium bike can keep up with a carbon bike. And both of these subjects are referenced to Chris Miller Cycling, and he's a fellow Aussie over there on the East Coast, and he does a podcast with a guy called Jesse. And before we get into the video, I just want to put my hands together for Jesse, because he went in the national championships and only 10 non-pros finished that race, and he was one of them. So that's really good for him to manage to finish that race out of only 10 people that finished. So congratulations to Jesse for that. And let's roll our intro and let's get into that response video to Chris Miller Cycling. In the podcast that Chris Miller did with Jesse, they talked about a couple of things that I want to reference. Now, the first thing was that they did mention some response videos that they did to other cycling creators. And number two, they also referenced a previous video where Chris did a study where he did a 2-climbed race and he compared a titanium bike with a carbon bike, a focus bike, which was the top focus bike. And this titanium bike was a custom made bike. And first of all, we're going to talk about the response video, because they did some videos which responded to other people. Now, one thing I would like to say about response videos, because I do them and I'm doing one right now, is that this is YouTube. And I think that audiences expect response videos. It's throughout all genres, people do response videos. They're very popular, they're very successful. And I think that people giving their opinion or giving an opinion that's related to a topic or what someone else has talked about, and they have a difference of opinion, that's quite okay. And they're quite okay to make a video about that. And in the circumstances, we had Chris Miller and also Jesse apologising for their response video. One was for should be GCN cancelled, and one was to do with Cam Nichols. Now, Cam Nichols is another Aussie, so he's a good bloke and he does some good content. And GCN does some good content as well. Now, we know that they're heavily sponsored, and of course we know that they're not going to say anything too negative about the topics. But the issue is that he kind of apologised for making that heading GCN cancelled. But the reality is, if GCN packed up shop tomorrow, someone else would step into their shoes. That type of content people want to watch. They want to have their favourite product they like reinforced. And GCN fits that genre, that space. And yeah, I think GCN's talking a load of rubbish, and I don't agree with them, but I wouldn't say that they need to be cancelled. But I know that's a clickbait title. Chris Miller did it. And if I was him, I wouldn't apologise it, because if he really believes that and that's his opinion, he should stand by his opinion. And it's also the same with Jesse. If Jesse has made a video about Cam Nichols and that's his opinion, he should stand by that. You shouldn't have to apologise for your ideas and your thoughts and your opinions. So that's just a little bit of advice to those guys over in the Eastern States. If it was me, I wouldn't be apologising unless they were going to shut down my channel or something pretty drastic. But I've been in hot water as well with other brands, and if you're going to be a little bit critical, you're going to attract a little bit of attention. And I don't mind that too much, because I want to say it as it is. I'm not one of these people who just goes along with the rhetoric and goes, oh, look, everything's all hunky-dory and beautiful and lovely, and we need to say what we're supposed to say because we might hurt someone's feelings. That's not me. And the second point is, which is really more about what my channel is about, is that looking at technical stuff and making evaluations. Now, I didn't do the study. Chris did the study. Now, he was very happy with this bike he got, this Focus bike, and he was saying how it felt fast and it felt like it accelerated quickly and all these things. And then he managed to get access to a titanium bike. Now, we do know that titanium bikes are just made with our typical round-shaped tubing. It's nothing special. There's no aerodynamics, nothing like that. It's just your box standard bike. Yes, it's made out of a different material, but the frame design is pretty typical from years gone by. And when he rode these two bikes, they showed that they were very close. In fact, the titanium bike was actually quicker up this ride. Now, we know there's variances, could be wind variances, could be everything variances, but whatever you want to say, these two bikes were very, very close, and you would automatically assume that a carbon frame that can have the shapes and everything like that, basically made to specifics to optimize certain aerodynamics and airflows and all that sort of thing, you would expect the Focus bike to really be ahead in leaps and bounds. I would probably like to think, at least 20 or 30 or 40 seconds, up a climb. And that just wasn't the case. They were pretty even. And we've also had Pete Dork do the disc brake and the rim brake test. And even though I'm a bit of a rim brake advocate, that showed there's basically no difference between the frames. So we've got two studies that are done in two different parts of the world, and we can see that the differences when it comes to the bike design really make very little, if no significant difference to the speed of the bike. This begs the question to me that all of this aerodynamics at these guys are pretty fit is really, it's just a complete myth. It's not a myth that you could probably measure it in a wind tunnel, but it's a myth in the real world. It doesn't make any significant difference. It's really more to do with optimizing and making a product that looks a bit different, and then they can claim that it does something for marketing purposes. So, guys, that's my point. And I'd just like to say thanks to Pete Dork for doing that study, because I have done some on-the-road type tests, and they're a lot of work. And I know that Pete Dork, especially being an engineer, would have taken a lot of care, and that would have taken him a lot of time and a lot of consideration. And the weather's pretty awful over there in the UK at the moment, and he still took his time to get the temperature and everything right, did to and froms in pretty cold, terrible weather to get the results. And then we also had Chris, who did two different bikes, timed them. Maybe his wasn't as intense to do as Pete Dork's, but he did the test, he did the study, and he was pretty open about it, because, if you would have taken Chris, or if someone had told you what do you think was quicker, I would have said the carbon bike, and I think he even would have believed the carbon bike was. And it just goes to show that when you compare these products out on the road, that's just not the case. So leave your comments down below. What do you think about these tests that Pete Dork done and these tests that Chris Miller done? And what do you think about how the results came out? Leave your comments down below. Do you think that this is really showing that we're buying into all this hype and it just doesn't really exist? Well, anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it, and I will see you next vid.